Welcome back everybody. Today we're going to take a look at deploying our Nuxtjs and .NET Core application to our Linode server using GitHub Actions. Now if you're unfamiliar with build pipelines and GitHub Actions, I highly recommend you watch the episode at the beginning of the series. I'm going to leave a link for that in the description, where we really go over the bare basics of build pipelines, and then also make sure you watch the previous episode where we go over the Linode infrastructure and get an idea of what a virtual machine is, how to set it up, and stuff like that, okay? Other than that, we can proceed with this episode. By the end of it, you're gonna know how to build and publish your application to a virtual machine in the cloud. And specifically, we're going to be using Linode, okay? Now, from the previous episode, I showed you how to set up a secure VM. Go ahead and set one of those up, make it fresh. And here I'm going to have a couple of steps and I have my repository open to run the actions. Here's one of these fresh machines. All this has is basically root disabled and password login disabled, and it has just my user set up so I can connect to it, right? So back at the terminal, let's go ahead and connect to our virtual machine here. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to enter the passphrase for my SSH key. I'm going to clear this. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a user for our GitHub Actions, right? So again, every time we create a user, he's going to show up in the home directory. So let's go ahead and sudo add user. Make sure your user has sudo admin privileges. So, and again, watch the previous episode to know that. I have the link for that in the description. If you didn't, go and check it. So let's go ahead and add a user. We're gonna call him GitHub Actions. We can enter the password for this account, and for the next account, set the user up. And then if we list the directories in GitHub in the home directory, we're going to see our GitHub Actions user. Now going into, so let's cd into home slash GitHub Actions, and in here again list all directories. If you don't have that, again ls-a. And here what we really want to do is we want to create a directory that will be the .ssh directory, so we can put an SSH key in here. Make sure you run it as sudo. And then we can cd into the SSH directory and create a file called authorized keys. Okay, so again, we will list this, and we can then go ahead and edit this file. So in this file, in my other terminal, this is where, if I take a look, this is from the previous episode where we have the CI/CD and CI/CD public keys generated, and basically we learned about how to use our sync. Let's go ahead and take out the public key. We're gonna grab it and make sure, if you're just watching this episode, when you create it, make sure you don't give it a password, okay? Make sure that if you are pasting without pressing the insert first, it will kill off your first character, so just make sure you have that. Colon, right quit, save that. Double check the authorized keys that it is indeed in there. Once you got that, you can double check that you can actually log in. So let's go ahead, ssh-i cicd, and again, we can use GitHub Actions at whatever IP we had. So this IP here, let's go ahead, copy it, put it here, and there we go, right? So just accept it and you should be able to log in with no password. And at this stage, you're really good to go. So coming back to this terminal here where I disconnected, let's just connect to it again because we want to give this user some privileges. Specifically, in the var folder, what we want to do is we want to create a directory where we're going to put our application. So let's go ahead and make a directory in here, and we'll call it tricking library. And make sure you use sudo. As always, if you want to be a cool kid, you can use sudo double bang, and that will just put the previous command in there. And it would work a lot better if you input your password in there as well. So if we take a look at var, we will see the tricking library in there now. Now let's go ahead and create the two folders for each individual component, right? So let's make a directory in var tricking library, and we're going to make an app directory, and make sure you run it as sudo. And then we want to make an API directory. So our Nuxtjs application is going to go in the app directory. our API is going to go in the API directory. Now what we want to do is give the GitHub Actions user permissions to actually go ahead and write, read, and execute from this folder, right? So he's going to need to write some files into there. He's going to need permissions, okay? For this, you just want to make sure that you first run set facl, right? If you don't have this command, it's going to tell you to do this thing here. Now, don't do it straight away. What you want to do, because for me, this is a fresh instance, I want to just do sudo apt update. If you haven't ran this command yet, go ahead and run it. And then, I mean, you can go ahead, copy this command and get ready to run it after this update has finished. Shouldn't take too long, especially if it is somewhere in the cloud. There it goes. It looks like it's done. Let's go ahead, run this command, sudo apt install acl. And this should now give us the setfacl command. Okay, so setfacl command, there we go. Now you should get something like this. The specific command that we want to run is, so let's get our setfacl. We want to set the recursive flag, and then we want to supply the -m command. I just know the kind of the format for it, where we basically specify the user, which for us it is GitHub actions, and then read, write, execute. And where do we want this to happen? In our var tricking library directory, right? So we're just giving it full permissions in the tricking library, the directory. So it basically has free reign. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute it. You are gonna get operation not permitted. Just put sudo at the beginning of it, and you should be good. Okay, so at this point, if you watched the previous episode, you're gonna know how to test it. Go ahead, log in as your GitHub Actions user. Try to write some files to it. If you can do it, if you can rsync onto there, you should have no problem. But at this point, what I'm going to do is, in the interests of time, we're gonna go and proceed to build our pipeline. Okay, go into Writer, and in here where we attach the .github folder, let's go in there, and here we will have our workflows. Now, this is the workflow that we had from the beginning of the series, where we quickly just took a look at building our application and how the pipeline works. Now we want to go ahead and replace this. So we're going to build two pipelines, one for our app, one for our API, and they're going to work separately. So if you only made changes to one, you only publish one, right? You don't update the whole thing all the time. We can go ahead and copy this thing. Let's go ahead and call it API build and deploy. All right. That thing, I've recently found out that's a bug, so I actually got so fed up. I took a look at what that is, and that is a current bug. Everybody's getting this, and everybody's like, "Can you fix it, please?" But yeah, anyway, we'll go ahead, delete the build YAML. I mean, we could have just renamed it, but let's go ahead and most of this stuff, we'll just remove it up to the pull code part, where that's the part that actually pulls the code. On push, we're gonna change this to be workflow dispatch, and just put empty options here. So what workflow dispatch is going to do is instead of being triggered on every push, what this is going to be is you are going to have to manually trigger this, right? If you want to keep it on push, on master merge or whatever, go into the option, go to the GitHub Actions documentation. I'm going to leave a link for that in the description, and you can take a look at it and set that up yourself. So for the name, let's call this API build and deploy to Linode. What are the other things that we want to supply here? Let's go ahead and I'm going to leave the links for this in the description. First of all, we have the checkout function. So if you do not have this option, which you should really have from the previous command, the link for that is in the description. You should have some code samples and options here. The other bit is the setup.net. So all this is going to do is just copy this command over here. We really don't need to do anything funky. Come back to your writer or your ID or whatnot. We can remove the steps. Uses checkout, we don't need that. Come back here, and all we need is uses action /setup.net v1. So all this does is set up the correct .NET SDK for you, so whichever one you want. Let's go ahead, delete the comment, we don't need it. And then .NET build. So we're going to replace this with a restore, and we're just going to give this some kind of name. So let's just say dash name restore dependencies. So just going to restore the dependencies. If for some reason some packages are missing or whatever, we're going to know early. But other than that, once we restore the dependencies, let's go ahead and build a production version of our application. So if I go ahead, click on my project here, open up the terminal at that location. Let's go ahead and just type in .NET publish, and we're going to say supply the configuration of a release, right? This is also going to run with a restore, so you can see it's running the restore. We can supply a no restore flag to not restore it, but primarily what I'm after here is one of these directories, because we're going to need to say, look, where do we want to get the files from in order to push to our server, and we will need to do stuff like secret injection, right? Here are the paths, just take note of them. We can collapse this for now and actually just copy this bit here, go to the new line and paste it. So this one will be create production build. We'll do that .NET publish. See again configuration release, and we'll say no restore flag to not rerun this command that we just ran here. Okay, next thing, so once we have created a build, if we take a look at something like this bin right here, release, and if we take a look in the publish directory, it's still going to be our application. But if we take a look at the production app settings.json, we still have our secrets that we need to populate. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can do that. Specifically, that's going to be the next GitHub action, kind of like we do the checkout and how we do the installation of the latest SDK. Again, this is just a separate action for, injecting secrets into your app settings.json. And again, link for that is in the description. Go ahead, copy about this much from where it says uses. Go back to your IDE and just paste it here. So here we'll basically say what kind of files, where do you want to inject stuff. You can see that you can specify multiple files. Specifically, what we're going to be after is the tricking library.api bin release, and let's see, just the publish directory really. Let's go ahead and grab it, collapse this. We're gonna go replace all these files here. We're gonna grab the backslash and we're going to replace it with forward slashes. Okay, in front of the tricking library API, we can just put a / just to say that from the current directory we're going to be in tricking library. Just go ahead and do this thing that you need to. Now you can see here this is basically how you set nested variables. So if you have a setting that is, for example, like S3 settings, you can do something like S3 and then access key, we set it here, and then secret key, we set it here. Okay, and service URL, yeah, we can set the service URL as well. And you grab secrets like this, right? So they're going to be from your secret vault, whatever you need to put in there. Send grid options, we can also put that in there as well. So that's going to be the API key, the from option as well. This secret, we're not going to be using these two options, so, and the provider, I'm really not that bothered about it, so let's go ahead and just set it to S3. These are the primary options that we want to supply. Okay, so let's just get the rest of our S3 settings here, and we'll say bucket, and root. Okay, so here are the production settings, some secret key. Let's go ahead and give these some kind of names. So send grid, or you can put these in capitals, send grid API key, send grid from S3 access, and then same thing here, but let's say secret key, S3 service URL. I know you can get the bucket name from the URL, etc. I just don't want it to be part of, I mean, just put it in the thingy in the secrets, right? Root, let's get rid of the root. I really don't care about the root. Let's just say tricking library here. Okay, so this is fine. Now let's go ahead and actually specify the app settings production file. So let's go ahead, copy the name here, put it here, and there we go. So this option will grab whatever secrets we have in our GitHub actions, and it's going to go ahead and apply them here. The last bit is really, once we have seeded our secrets, we are ready to just push our application to Linode. So let's go ahead and give this a name, push to Linode. You can give this one a name as well. So let's go ahead and actually do that. Maybe put this on this line, a name, inject secrets. And the push to Linode bit, this command is going to look something like this. So run, we're going to put a pipe, and then we're just going to write out the command one by one. The first thing that we're going to need is, if you remember from the previous episode, how we needed to specify our SSH key, our private key, to our sync command, we're going to need to do the same thing. So let's first write out the rsync command, and then we're going to put stuff into it and supply the appropriate secrets. Okay, so rsync -e, we're going to need to say ssh-i, and we'll say something like ssh key. We can say go ahead and grab it from the home directory of this user. Go ahead and specify the flags, specify the user. You can grab this one from your secrets as well. And this is going to look something like this. So quotes, $, let's say user, and then we're going to say @ again quotes, $, target IP, so the IP address, and then we're going to say where do we want to deploy to. So var tricking, I can't remember if it was underscore library or whatever. Let's go ahead and SSH to the machine real quick. Oh, we're still there, and this one is frozen. Let's just quickly get on there, and we will ls var and tricking library, so it's with a dash and API. So let's just copy this one here, come back to our application, put it here, and this is going to be /API. So this is everywhere that we're putting this, and the only thing that we're forgetting here really is the actual thing that we are going to be copying. So in our case, it is going to be this path here. So let's go ahead, take it, put it here, and put a $sign here, okay? So this is what it's going to look like. We are missing some parameters. So we need an SSH key, we need a user, and we need a target IP, okay? For the run command, you can specify the environment files, kind of like how we did here. So let's go ahead and specify some of these. We'll say SSH key here. Let's duplicate this a couple of times. We'll just say user, and we'll say target IP here as well. You can make them uppercase, lowercase, you know, whatever floats your boat here, really. Let's go ahead, copy this one command here, and we're gonna say GitHub _actions SSH user, GitHub actions user, and here we're gonna say Linode IP, right? So don't commit your IP address to the repository, don't commit your user which you're using. All of these are basically attack vectors, okay? Just try not to give out any information. So once we're supplying the SSH key here, we are gonna have it as a parameter. So what we can do is we can just go ahead and echo our SSH key into this SSH _ key here, and we're just gonna need to give it some privileges, like 600. I don't know exactly what this stands for. I have copied this from the internet, which seems like a reliable place. And the last bit really that I haven't explained it, but what we will need to add is we will need to say -o strict host key checking equals no. This has something to do with the Linux machine and the SSH command recording which machines have which IP addresses, and basically recording that when you're connecting to a particular address, it's the same machine that you have connected to it before. Since this is not our VM and this is constantly changing, etc., sometimes this will succeed, sometimes this will not succeed, and that's because sometimes we will be connecting to the same VM. Sometimes we're going to tear a VM down and the build pipeline is already going to know about that virtual machine. So just make sure you have this option to kind of say, we want to ignore that check. So this should be it. This should be more the pipeline on the harder side. The source code is in the description. So if you're struggling to copy from the screen here, you can go ahead and follow the link to the source code, and let's go ahead and fill out some of these secrets that we have here. So for this, we're going to need to go into our repository. We're going to need to go into settings, and we're going to need to go into secrets here. You can see here, I already have my GitHub actions. Let me just verify that I have it here. So GitHub. Okay, I actually named it incorrectly, but let's go ahead and keep it as GitHub because I don't want to put it there again. But basically what this is if you, let's exit this one. If you take a look at your private key, if you print that, you copy the contents and you paste them into here, this is what this SSH key is, right? So if you remember how we connected to our machine where we provide the -i CICD, this is basically that SSH key that, again, we're trying to just replicate the command on a different computer, somewhere where we don't have our user input, right? But our user input is through the secrets. Now what I'm going to do is for the setup that I had, all of these are contained in my user secrets. You should have them by now as well. If you haven't signed up to Linode, the link is in the description. Again, you can have a $20 credit. Go ahead and fill these out. These should be self-explanatory. If you've set up SendGrid, you know, put that there, SendGrid form, etc. Your S3, you know, the information, the secret information. Just make sure the names match. Okay. This shouldn't be too hard. I'm going to cut the video here. I'm going to put in all my secrets, and then we're going to continue the video. Okay. So here we are after creating all the secrets. I did rename my CICD, SSH, and CICD user. So where I said GitHub Actions, SSH, and user, I've renamed that because actually didn't let me create it, right? So I've renamed these appropriately, and yeah, just the rest of it exists as well. We are ready to go ahead and, you know, give this a go. Let's go ahead and go to the commit section. You can do this through the command line if you want to. Let's go ahead and say API. I'm going to say episode 65, I think it's going to be. I'm going to open up the Git menu here. So if this was 63, the previous one was 64, which had no code edits. We're just going to say API build pipeline. Okay, so that's going to be the commit message for me. Yep, so that has been added on. Let's go ahead and push that over to master. Once that's been pushed, let's go ahead back here. We're going to go into actions. And in here, we're going to have our API build and deploy to Linode. Now, if we go ahead and you should have this button, run workflow. Let's go ahead run it. That should kick off a build. If you have any problems with getting the workflow action to show up, leave a comment or reach out to me on Discord. Put it in the tricking library channel. I will help you out. Okay, so that is going to run. Let's see how it does. If it fails, we're going to go and take a look at what happens, but I'm going to cut the video here and we're going to take a look at the result. So we got the big green tick. Let's go ahead and verify that we actually have this on the server side. Open up the terminal and let's go ahead and SSH onto the box. Input the password and let's look at var tracking library, and this was API. Am I right? And there we go. At this point, you can go ahead and take a look at your app settings.production.json and make sure that all your secrets are in there. I'm going to take a look at that as well. So you are, after this, you are just going to see a blank screen, or maybe we can do something like grep from, and that should just, you know, give me that one line. Okay. And I can see that it is actually injected the thing that I wanted it to. And if I take a look at the app settings production, you can see that the from is actually a secret. So that has been injected correctly for me. So that's the not so secret, but still not an email that you want to put into your repository and potentially get it scraped or whatever, okay? And then you're gonna receive spam emails. So there we go, that's the part about deploying .NET Core. And now that we pretty much got the part of like pushing and getting the keys in and the secrets, let's do the same for our Node.js application. Our Nuxtjs application is going to be a little bit easier, since this is, I'd say, is the hardest part. Let's go ahead, open our, what's it called, projects. And again, we'll just copy the, not cut, abort. Let's copy the API build and deploy. We're gonna call it app build and deploy. So we can say Nuxt.js app build and deploy to Linode. Same workflow dispatch, build our app, that is fine, pull code. Instead of the .NET setup, what we want to do is use the, again, this is in the description, the setup node command. Let's go ahead, grab this much. So actually the first one, we don't need it. Let's take this. We are going to replace the .NET Core setup step. And if you wonder how I did that, if I highlight this area about this much, if I press tab, it's going to shift it to the right. If I press shift tab, it's going to shift it to the left. Okay. We, instead of doing this for restoring dependencies, we can say install dependencies. And instead of this, we'll do npm install. And the problem with this is it's very awkward to supply a directory for from which directory you want to run to npm install. So in here we can set working directory, and we can set it to web-client. Okay, so that's going to be, again, if we take a, you see I have show hidden folders in the root of our application. This is when we pull the checkout. Again, if you watched the previous episode, you're gonna know about this. But web client is in there. We're just basically saying the working directory is web client, so it's just gonna run this command from this directory. Okay, it's gonna do npm install. It's gonna install all the node modules. Let's go ahead, copy this command. Let's just go to the beginning here. So instead of generating this production build, if we take a look at our app settings, what was it? Package.json. The build command is what we want to run. So let's go ahead and run npm run build. This is going to build our application. We have no secrets to inject, so let's go ahead and just remove this step. And the last step is push to Linode. This time we're not pushing this application here. What we are going to push is we're just going to push the whole web client with the source code. Okay, it's a little bit awkward with Node.js applications, and it's going to be a little bit awkward with Nuxt. The thing is, if you look at package.json, we're going to need to do npm run start, so we're going to need the script, and we are going to need the Nuxt command, which is going to be in our node modules, right? Instead of like separating the folders and moving them about and getting your perfect bundle, you can do that by just running your shell commands. Like you see how we're just running shell commands here. So you will do run pipe. If you want to set that up, like move the .nuxt directory into this publish directory, and then get your package.json node modules, get all of those things into one separate folder. You're going to need to make that folder, and then you push that separate folder. I'm not going to bother with that headache. I'm just going to push everything, okay? And again, the options here remain the same. It's still going to be the same pipeline. And firstly, what I want to do, because this pipeline is going to take a little bit longer, I don't want to waste too much time. So we're going to go into web client here. And primarily, for our development environment, we had SSL certificates set up, right, to work with Chrome and cookie authentication and stuff like that. In our nuxt.config, what we did is we've set up this configuration here. What I want to do is I want to cut it, because we're not going to have these, we're not going to have HTTPS when we're going to be hiding behind Nginx. And we're definitely not going to have these development certificates up there, okay? So we don't actually need them. What we're going to do is we're going to take that server config, we're going to scroll down all the way to the bottom, and where we have this build extension, And let's go ahead, paste this here. And on the config, we're just gonna say .server equals to this object, right? And we only ever want to provide this configuration if we are in development. And luckily, the context that gets passed in here, we can say is dev. So if we are in development, go ahead and apply this configuration and make sure you delete that comma. And just notice if you skip this step and you're rewatching or whatever and your build is failing because you have this thing, you know, shame on you for not watching firstly, but go ahead and do that before you commit this, okay? So again, same as before, let's just make sure we commit our Nuxt config. Just, you know, do a final check on what you're actually committing. So check out, set up the tools, run installation. So that's going to give us all of our node modules. We are going to build the app and then we're going to go ahead and deploy it. Okay. So API build pipeline, this is going to be again episode 64, and this is now going to be app build pipeline. Let's go ahead, commit that, and we can go ahead and publish it as well. So I think that's pretty much it. Now it's pushed. Let's go ahead and take a look at, I'm going to close all of these because I don't think we need them anymore. Again, if we go into actions again, we will see our Nuxtjs application build and deploy. Let's go ahead and run this workflow. And yeah, basically we now have two build and publish pipelines that can be run from master. Again, you can set up your own triggers. You can separate the publish and build. You can create artifacts and releases and stuff like that. I think if you are working in teams and you're working on different releases and you need that fine-grained, like publish version 1, migrate from version 1 to version 2, version 2 starts crashing, you need to roll back to a previous version, or you have different parts of your application, you know, and you deploy version 2 across and then only one service is crashing and you just roll back that one service. If you need that fine-grained, again, that is a little bit more, you know, complex build pipeline and deployment pipeline. You will need to separate these out into separate steps, publishing artifacts and stuff like that. We're not doing anything like that, I think, for your personal project where you're maintaining them alone and stuff like that. It's perfectly fine to have a simple pipeline like this and trigger it manually. It is, we're still keeping close to that sort of one click, although it is not entirely one click. It's sort of one click to get it there, and then we have to like, we will have to do additional steps to update it and stuff like that. But that's going to be the next episode of how we're actually going to be hosting it fully with the domain and stuff like that. But for now, we're just getting our applications onto the virtual machine and we're going to create an image so we can basically start running it from there. Okay. So while I was rambling here and talking, it has finished. We get the green tick. Everything is fine. Let's go ahead back to the terminal. We are going to connect to our machine again. We can go ahead and list our var tricking library app. And yep, the app, what do we have in there? We have nothing, and I am afraid I have put everything into my API. So let's go ahead and say rm rf and dash star. Exit that. Let's go ahead and say sudo. So rmrf like this, sudo, and that should be it. So now the directory should hopefully be left in there, so we don't need the sudo there, and just dash API. So the dash API directory should still be there, but we've cleared it now again, okay? So just an honest mistake. Let's go ahead back to our build pipeline. So where did we have it here? At the end, that's where it was hiding. We want to publish it to the dash app directory, and really, you can see how this is a code change. This is probably something that you want to supply from your secrets directory as well. So if you're changing something in terms of your deployment pipeline, it is not a code change in your code base. It is a code change in configuration in your build pipeline, right? So let's do that. Now we're going to be publishing it to the correct directory. We're just going to say app build pipeline directory fix. Let's commit that. We're going to go ahead and publish that again. Okay, and while that's pushing, we can go ahead, grab our build pipelines. We can go ahead and let's run our API. So let's run it from master. and we can go ahead and run our next pipeline as well and run it from master. So both of these are now queued. You can take a look at this, you can take a look at this, you can race them, you can place bets, you know, world's your oyster here. I'm gonna cut the video here, we're gonna come back when this is done, and we're gonna take a look at the results. So this is now finished. Let's go ahead, come back to our terminal. Hopefully we have not been kicked out yet. Let's go ahead and list our API. That looks like it's the other way around. Let me take a look. Where did I API build and deploy? So yeah, again, we're just gonna fix this. I'm not gonna run it again, but just understand that, you know, again, probably maybe want to supply it from configuration, maybe not. But there you go. So API build pipeline, that has been configured to put it in the app. It put it in the app. App build pipeline has been configured to put it in the API, and has put it in the API. One thing, it may seem like we are actually missing a .nuxt folder. Let me ls-a, and yeah, it looks like we're missing it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the logs in the build pipeline. So I was about to end this episode a little bit prematurely. Let's take a look at what is in, I haven't renamed this one, so, but it is in npm run build. That seems like it has worked. Let's take a look at push to Linode. And yeah, so it pushes a bunch of node modules. This list is big as hell. Let's take a look. So yeah, it doesn't seem like it actually published the .nuxt folder that we're meant to get from with our build. So I'm gonna take a look at what's up, and then we're gonna come back. So after reading up on this, it turns out that the problem is, or seems to be, the star sign here. So we're gonna get rid of the star sign here, and we're gonna get rid of the star sign here, and that is more like regex pattern matching, which seems like we just don't need it. So let's go ahead and commit this. So this is going to be app and API pipeline fix. Let's go ahead, commit this. We're gonna publish this, and we're gonna run the two what's called two pipelines again. Okay, so when that's done, let's come back. Let's go to our actions. We're going to run the API build. We're gonna run the Nuxtjs app build as well. We could have probably just ran, they're gonna put them in separate folders. Quickly, quickly. It's a race against time. RMRF. API. Yeah. App. Oh no. This is exciting. Nothing's in there? Well, hopefully it's gonna create them. If not, we're gonna see the errors. So hopefully I didn't just majorly mess it up. Yeah, otherwise, let's wait for it and we'll come back. So at this point, the two have finished and they seem to be deployed. So let's go ahead and take a look at the API. All the appropriate things seem to be here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the app, and all of our hidden files are now here as well. Okay, so just a little mistake, a little bit bumpy as always. Nevertheless, hopefully you found this episode quite educational. If you don't know anything about build pipelines, I know if I watched something like this back then, when I didn't know anything, I would have definitely found it useful. Nevertheless, this will be it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Reach out to me on my Discord server. I also stream on Wednesdays and Sundays on Twitch at 6 p.m. London time. Come say hi. And as always, I'll see you in the next episode.